All right, social media, a reality, and certainly, as you could look into the Arab Spring, could be a force for good, or it can be a force for bad. It is credited with kickstarting, as I said, the Arab Spring, a movement, for better or worse, that has changed the Middle East here, that gave voice to a population that was too often just ignored or worse. Occupy Wall Street, a movement back stateside, engaging young people in politics in a new way, good or bad. Social media, though, also kickstarting yesterday's violence, both in Egypt and Libya. The fact that a lone real estate developer in California, and I'll say it, an outright lunatic, can upload an amateurishly produced anti-Muslim movie, and that incites riots halfway across the world, speaks to the power of not only the media, but also really the lack of regulations attached to it. Now, this guy's movie got the attention via Twitter following condemnations from Egyptian clerics. And to that point, yesterday's violence almost completely fueled here by social media. It almost became a virus that just spread. And it also raised the question of whether or not this controversial film crosses the line into something that's just free and objectionable into outright hate speech. So, who should be responsible for regulating it? And if we look at other countries around the world who have a line here that they'll designate, should we maybe adopt some of those restrictions as well? And I'll use Germany, guys, as an example. Post-World War II, any anti-Semitic comments are criminal in Germany. Should we draw a line here because people, innocent Americans, paid with their lives here because of some guy's decision that he was going to mock the religious symbol and leader of the Islamic faith?
Of course, it's tragic that Americans and an ambassador, U.S. ambassador, lost his life and the fellow Americans. But it's a slippery slope, Richard. Once you go down this argument, down this hill, if you will, to limit free speech, who decides what's good? Who decides what's bad? Where does it stop? You'll never get that agreement in this country.
I don't think we should be using Germany as an example. The neo-Nazi movement in Germany has seen a resurgence in recent years, and all of their censorship is not tamping down on some of the anti-Semitism that we've been hearing about and we've been seeing in recent years.
It's hard to measure. Imagine if it wasn't on the books, what would be out there and what propaganda would be allowed and to be overtly done as if tacitly accepted. I mean, Germany could never do that after the horrors that they perpetrated with the Holocaust. So forgetting even Germany, Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes obviously famously talked about, you have the right to have freedom of speech in this country, but you can't cry fire in a crowded theater. In effect, what that guy did with the film was, you could argue, crying fire in a crowded theater. He inflamed, intended to offend, and he created a situation foreseeable that could have led to loss of life. We also saw what happened with the burning of the Korans, by that Florida pastor. My point is, do we need to have lines or not?
But that's political speech. It's been deemed by the Supreme Court to be considered political speech, and satire is also something that is protected by law. Listen, this guy's a nut, but if you allow this video, which by the way had very little, if anything, to do with the violence that was coordinated that we saw yesterday.
We don't know. There's a debate about. You very well could be right.
We're going to see that, but we have watched the way that Al-Quaida and particularly some of the Iranian forces that are involved in this proxy war in a number of these Middle Eastern countries. We've seen the way that they operate, and they use things like this to sort of legitimize violence against Western targets. But they're using something that is free for us as a tool. What you wouldn't want to do is restrict freedom here because our enemy is using it to sort of legitimize violence. That doesn't make sense.
You're also basing it on the reaction. Well, these guys went crazy in Libya, so that must be hate speech. But there are people who've reacted to things that President Obama have said that you could argue as hate speech.
What if he said we need to kill people at an embassy in Benghazi, and they went out and did it? Should there be any culpability on his part at that point?
You know what? You're not supposed to You're not supposed to directly call to or incite violence, but at the same time, it's freedom of speech. You have the freedom of speech. What are we supposed to do? Never mention Muhammad?
Well, what about all the anti-Catholic videos, anti-Christian videos, anti-Semitic videos, and people have that protected speech.
All I'm saying, guys, is I understand your point, and I think I'd rather be on your side of the argument. I'll only make the devil's advocate point about one thing. We are the only westernized nation that does not have on the books here something that puts this in place.
To our credit.
We'll see. All right, we're going to keep this conversation going online. We ask you to head to our Facebook page as well as Twitter and sound off. There's our question, this anti-Muslim video. Should this be protected speech or should this be classified as hate speech? We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we will head back to the campaign trail. America Votes up next. Stay with us.